Hello again and welcome to Forum for a Better Understanding. This is our 280th program, but it's going to be very, very special. We always try to have dialogue with our guests. We try to bring you interesting conversation among different religious faiths and different traditions. But today we're actually going to go back to the root and find out what is it that really people of diverse directions and diverse backgrounds need to do to have real dialogue. What is it that's preliminary to doing real work together? Is first the hard work of listening and getting into the life and the story of another person. Now we have wonderful guests who are going to be here with us today, all the way from San Mateo. To my left is a retired pediatric dentist from San Mateo, Dr. Len Traubman, who with his wife Libby, 17 years ago, founded a very important program called Jewish-Palestinian Living Room Dialogue Group. And for those years, with 209 meetings and many other gatherings with people, they've been able to help people come to understand what there is at the bottom of relationship. It's good listening and being truly communicative. So we want to thank both of them for coming all the way from San Mateo today. Now, across from me is a new person I've never known till last night, but it's Michael Allen, who is a social worker and a creative consultant, a motivational speaker, someone who is very involved in the type of work that Len and Libby would like everyone to be involved in, making people appreciate who they are and to get able to grow beyond that in dialogue with other people. So we have three guests who are going to tell us a little bit about what they came to Fresno to do and why they went to a workshop on October 1st to see in action this wonderful model. We hope you enjoyed this program in next week's because we're going to be going into some very important material with you. Len, Libby, and Michael, thanks for coming all the way to be here today. Why don't we open up by having you tell us, in any way you'd like, the beginnings of this wonderful experience and where it's morphed and grown this living room dialogue.
Okay, you want me to start?
Sure.
Thank you so much for having us, and it's been wonderful being here in Fresno and meeting new friends and meeting all kinds of people here. Our Jewish-Palestinian living room dialogue stemmed from years before of learning the importance of building relationships and making heart connections with other people, especially people with whom we had some fear or misunderstanding or stereotypes. One of these experiences was in 1984 when we traveled to the Soviet Union to meet the enemy face to face. And during that period of time, we shared our personal stories with Soviet citizens, many physicians, dentists, nurses, hospital staff. It was a kind of a medical exchange. And through telling those stories, we began to realize how silly it was to stay at a distance and not to know the other and to just live by these incredible, fearful stereotypes. And it was a life-changing experience for us that we began to apply in many other relationship settings as well, ultimately leading us to being included in and invited to help participate in the planning of a conference of bringing Israeli Jews and Palestinians together to begin to see each other as human and equal.
So during the 1980s, we worked with bringing Soviets and Americans together. And as Libby said, when we met the people in the Soviet Union, we thought, this is nuts. They are so easy to work with, and they're deep, and they're spiritual, and they're cultured, and we do well together. And so then when we brought the Israeli and Palestinian citizen leaders together in 1991, and after we returned from Jerusalem to help gel them as a team, we started to learn how you really do this in your own neighborhood, recognizing and learning that an enemy is one whose story we have not heard.
And one thing that could flesh this out is to see in a little trailer something of an experience, but you may want to lead us into that experience at Washington High and let us know the connections we're going to want to make with that experience, and then bringing in Michael, who participated in a similar experience right here in Fresno.
Exactly. Well, after we learned how to communicate and learned that listening really is at the heart of it, and the person with the will and the skill to listen is the one with the power to transform the relationship. And after we really learned something and we had changed, we began working in public school classrooms, helping being exemplars to the students, but then helping them engaged and not just studying about it, but letting them have the experience like Challenge Day does and things that Michael has facilitated, how this works in real life. So the trailer that you're going to see is 6 minutes of a longer DVD that we actually give to people all over the world and that we can give to your listeners. And it shows what it looks like when students come together and engage properly.
Let's roll that clip, Greg, and then we're going to talk with Michael about how similar the experience was in Fresno.
On May 24th, 2006, 4 members of the Jewish-Palestinian Living Room Dialogue came to a Washington High School history class in Fremont, California. Maria Stotti's class spends several weeks each school year focusing on Israeli-Palestinian issues. She invited dialogue participants to help the students relate more personally to their curriculum and to each other.
I wanted this group to come to my classroom and talk to my kids, because when they receive this information from their textbooks or from their teacher, it's still not real for them. But when you come here and you bring people who went through this experience, they understand it better. It makes more realistic for them. And I think they use not only their brains to comprehend the situation, but also they have an emotional response to the situation. Today, as I promised, we have a dialogue group in our classroom, and they will present their ideas and their new approach, how to communicate in the times of conflict.
This is the public peace process. This is citizens doing what governments cannot do. Governments write treaties and enforce treaties, and citizens do what governments cannot, and that is building human relationships.
Teenagers have a very acute sense of fairness, and I think it's great for them to see that maybe at some level fairness exists.
Their houses are so worn down, and they depend, literally their life depends on their land.
I guess I've learned to just that we have to also listen to their side.
You will get a chance to meet today and listen to the stories of 2 people who used to be enemies and have learned to listen in a new way.
I found the Jewish-Palestinian group, which has Muslims, Catholics, Jews, Christians, others, and it was a wonderful, wonderful learning experience. And as part of that experience, I really learned to listen. And this is a bit humbling because I'm a college professor of communication, and I've even taught listening skills as part of every course I've ever taught because it's so important. But let me tell you, I didn't understand the depth, I didn't understand the power of truly opening oneself up and hearing one another's story until I reached the dialogue group.
Before we subdivide ourselves into Christian, Muslims, and Jews, it so happened I'm a Christian. I was brought up as a Christian. We all believe in one God. And that's the common denominator that unites us, all 3 of us, the 3 religions, Judaism, Christianity, and Mohammedanism, Islam. If we could consider ourselves to be of the human race, and we all believe in the oneness of God, that will bring us closer to look at each other on an equal level.
Each of us comes into the room with our own very important life experience, and we all have a frame of reference. The goal is to acknowledge that I don't have all the answers, and it's by sharing and being open with each other through the dialogue and through listening as we've never listened before that we can learn more about those other frames of reference, those other ideas, and then therefore expand our own and be richer for it.
My dad's side of the family, my grandma was the one who got citizenship to the United States, and she had to live and work here for almost 10 years. still have family. You have a lot of family here too.
I have a lot of family here, Australia, Africa, India, England, Canada.
Have you ever met family in like Africa or England or anything?
I might go to Africa summer.
Both of my grandparents are dead, and my grandpa was in Africa in World War II.
How religious are you? Like you said before, you're a Catholic. What does your faith mean to you?
I don't even know where to start right now because actually I'm really touched by her story, and I just never really realized like how much we actually have in common.
I'm a Muslim Palestinian, and my partner was Jewish, so we thought that we kind of clash in this, but we actually learned that like both our families have gone through a lot of the same stuff, and we've had a lot of the same experiences, and both of us really want the same things for our people. We both, disagree with what some people are doing, and we want peace.
When you set aside time to really talk to someone and really get to know them, we're all the same, every single one of us here. It's just like we all have that same connection within us, and we just need time to set aside and find that out, I guess. And this was really wonderful.
We'll be back in 1 minute. Unfortunately, we do have to take a break in the middle of our program, but be right back with you, and we're going to hear about what we did in Fresno on October 1st to actually bring to life the very same principles you just saw in that clip.
KNXT thanks all its loyal viewers and respected businesses who have supported your Catholic television station. Now you can support KNXT with program underwriting by having your name, your company's name, or organization associated with your favorite program. Detailed information about you or your company will appear before and after each program or day part you select. Keep the quality and spiritual message alive and make a difference. Call 559-488-7440 today or go online at knxt.tv to find out more about program underwriting on KNXT.
Well, welcome back to the second part of our program, which is going to be very, very personal and very, very real. We celebrated in Fresno on October 1st a very important event at Alliant University. There were people from all over the city gathering, called together by the Interfaith Social Justice Collaborative. They brought in the Traubmans to share with us this experience of dialogue. We're going to show some pictures right now that are going to let you appreciate some of the dynamic that was being experienced by all the participants at this gathering. And Michael, why don't you start sharing with us what it was that you were, knowing you were there for one reason, what was it that happened for you, and what was it that you most experienced positive to help you continue doing the things you're doing in your own work?
Well, it first started with meeting these two people. They were so warm and connected with me in a really beautiful way. And in reading the materials that they laid out, just reading the materials and how simple it was to look at how you could track simple communication and learn to talk to anyone just by the dialogue, the way they laid it out on their papers. I was touched by the variety of people in the room and the willingness to come and participate in something that is in a lot of ways fearful, to talk about our separation, our differences, racism, stereotypes, to begin to talk about those things. But we didn't talk about any of those things, and we transcended them because people began to talk about who they are and what's in their heart and what it's like to be them. And the way Jim set up the listening for everyone to just sit and listen to this person's story was, I call it magic. Because the magic that came out of that listening was that people were incredible smiles on their faces when they shared about the person they talked with, moving stories about recognizing their similarities, but coming from different backgrounds. There were 7 or 8 young men from Egypt there who, it just opens my heart to share that they came and felt so warm and connected to the group and participated. That to me was like a connection of international relationships right there in that little room at the university. I was touched by the young man that I sat with, who has been around the world in his own travels with his mom and dad and had a passion himself for bringing people together. And I think he was only 15 years old. So I was touched by his passion to want to bring peace to the world and participate in a peaceful society.
What was it, Len and Libby, that you hoped to offer, and how did it seem to realize itself? How did that group fulfill any of your hopes?
It's interesting that all the groups have one thing in common, and that is there's this deep desire to make a connection. And I think the people who came to the event were those who were looking about what it means to cross the lines and to build a different kind of community that we all really desire. So even though there's that common thread, there's still, every group has its diversity and its differences, and like Michael said, having these 7 Egyptian students there was really fantastic. We knew that there were other interesting people in the room as well from Israel, and so the stories were shared, some of them very deeply. And the important thing is, back to that quote, an enemy is one whose story we haven't heard. And you can see that when people overcome the fear that you mentioned at what it means to do that, and we had a couple people who came in and said, oh, I don't know, I'm kind of nervous about doing this. And then at the end they said, I'm really glad I had this opportunity. And it helps people see the next steps that they can take. And we do say that an evening like that is a beginning. It's not the end point, it's the beginning.
Len, you begin the evening with certain questions to sort of like focus where the conversation will go.
Yeah.
What are the principles that are very important for the people to stay on?
Well, the chart that was just on the screen, an enemy is one whose story we have not heard, and the power of story is very important. And we really, if we begin with issues and problem solving, it doesn't work as well as if you know the human being that you're sitting at the table with. That really is the beginning of change. And the reason a lot of change has been unsuccessful is that a lot of people have wanted change, wanted peace, wanted things to be better, but they have not wanted and pursued relationships, and it cannot be. We have to meet first at the heart so that the brain can start working right. And Michael has experienced this over and over. How do you experience that, Michael, in Challenge Day? And how have you seen the youth change?
Well, they're in a structured activity for 6 hours, and they change drastically before your eyes, because I know that young people are those same little kids on the playground. Yeah. When a little kid goes to the playground, they don't care what color you look like. They don't care how big or tall you are. Yeah. They just want to play with you. And kids have grown up, people have grown up with so many judgments and stereotypes and labels that those things get in the way. And rather than run to the playground, we build separate playgrounds. And so when young people begin to share what they really want and what's in their heart, and they listen to each other, they go back to being those kids who just love each other, don't judge each other. They just want to come together and have fun and support each other. And young people have such wisdom when they're able to just be authentic and be themselves and not have to live up to a label or live up to a stereotype. So,
if you ask like what a classroom could look like, if a class could start this way, a faculty could start their school year this way and really engage at the heart so that they'd come to school and not be afraid or not feel unacceptable, the learning curve would just shoot up. And we had students who would learn and flower, and the whole culture, the whole fabric of our nation would be different.
Recently, where we live in San Mateo, there was an incident at one of the high schools where a young man came in with a chainsaw and pipe bombs and all these things. They had to clear the school. And he, like many of the other stories that we've heard and incidents like that, ultimately say, nobody liked me, nobody understood me, and people describe that person as quiet, a loner, a little strange. And that's one of the things that Challenge Day really helps people overcome. There are these young people that need to have a friendly hand reach out to them. And I believe in my heart, unless there's a real mental handicap, that all of these people who feel dismissed, misunderstood, can get very angry and lonely and want to do something about it. That could be cleared up. And we've seen it at Challenge Day where the most hurt kids received an apology, and the other kids said, I'll never let you eat lunch alone again. I understand. That's what's needed. That heart connection and that understanding and reaching out to people who seem to be a little different or who are slightly misunderstood. We can change that.
You know, Lynn had a very beautiful way of describing, and Libby describing, the difference between conversation and dialogue.
Oh, yeah.
And just that simple technique of understanding that dialogue is listening and not the conversation of agreeing and battling or comparing, but just listening and acknowledging and wanting to learn more. And conversation is everything on the surface and not really going deep enough to really get inside and understand who a person is and how they feel and what their feelings mean to them. So dialogue, the way you set up dialogue is beautiful. It was simple, it was easy, and it didn't require a lot of instruction. Anybody can do it, like you said, if they understand the way you explain dialogue.
Michael, you're already involved in so many ways. Even this morning, as we're taping this afternoon, you're coming back from a very positive experience. Do you want to share even anything about another experience of yours that shows the similar effort, or where anything you did on October 1st is going to color what you'll do in the future because it was so clearly successful?
Yes. Well, I recently, within the last 2 weeks, I joined the Social Justice League, become a member of the steering committee. And when their work came, I went, wow, this is what I want to be involved in. If we have one God, and the focus in most religious communities is to help the community, well, why don't we hold hands so that we just take care of the community? And so many churches in Fresno can just hold hands, regardless of their religious definition, but the desire in their heart and do that. And this dialogue is a simple way of doing that. It's not a challenge of your religion. It's an invitation of your heart and your love for people. I'm working with an organization called Visions. And Visions for 20 years has put together an incredible process for helping people understand oppression, understand cultural differences, not only understand it, but learn to listen to people in a different way, have very clear ideas of how to communicate differences in a way that people come together. So I continue to study this multicultural work through Visions, and Visions is opening up some work here in Fresno, and I'm just excited to bring that work to every circle I'm involved in, which is many here in Fresno. So.
Excellent. I'm so glad you're here. And there's one thing I want Len and Libby to advise us about. We could put the screen up that gives the contact information. So what will they find about these DVDs? They're available for writing to you or calling you.
Well, they're the 2 DVDs that how-to, inspirational films that we produce. We're giving free to people all over the world who are interested in building relationships and crossing lines. And one is Dialogue at Washington High, of which you saw the trailer, and the other is Peacemakers, Palestinians and Jews together at camp. And there are facilitator and teacher curriculums to go with that, to do this in your classroom, in your mosque, in your synagogue, in your church, wherever you live or work, right in your home, in your marriage. So,
especially in one's marriage, you would think that these techniques are not only for global change, but for personal transformation and personal relationships.
That's the gymnasium of the spirit.
This is where we work.
Where do you think we learned all of our skills?
So Google Jewish-Palestinian dialogue, Google Jewish-Palestinian success, Jewish-Palestinian videos, and you'll come right to our website, and we'll be there by phone or email all over the world for anybody who's interested.
Well, I am really glad that we had this first program with these three wonderful guests talking about not only an experience that we celebrated in Fresno on October 1st, which there is material. If you are interested in learning more, you can just call the TV station also, 559-488-7440 anytime. Call, ask for information about programs at Channel 49. But next week we're going to be back and be talking with another guest, Karen Crozier, about her experience at this evening. And I guess we might want to give a little last thought about this program today and leading into next week. Len and Libby and Michael, a final thought.
The simplest thing about listening is that when you really listen, there's nothing to do, because the magic of the solution is in the listening. Mm-hmm. It's not in solving problems. It's not in fixing anything. There's nothing broken. There's nothing to fix. But if you listen to what's in a person's mind and heart, the magic of coming together takes care of itself.
Thank you.
I
Libby.
would say that we're living in an age where we're all interrelated, interconnected, and interdependent. And we absolutely, for the survival of the living system and all of life, we have to learn how to listen to each other and to the living system and take care of all of those relationships.
20 seconds, Lynn.
And my experience with people is that the soul's oldest memory is of union, and that the soul's deepest longing is for reunion. And people can make this their faith and start transforming their community and the planet.
It has been a privilege to host this particular episode of Forum for a Better Understanding. We hope you enjoyed it and that you'll join us next week, because we will be able to, one more time, share with the Traubmans, and we'll be going deeper into another global situation, which is the Palestinian-Israeli crisis. But it's something that is as local as in our own hearts. The conflict is not only in the Middle East, it's in our own psyche. We hope you'll be here next week. God bless.